Call to order
Just
the
call the meeting to
call the meeting to order for closed session, right? Yeah,
order. First, if there's any public comment for the closed session items,
okay. Is there any public comment for the closed session items? Doesn't look it.
and there's nothing on email,
Okay,
and then we'll do a roll call.
all right, let's do a roll
Trustee
call.
Jackson Miller,
Present?
trustee Donnelly,
Present.
trustee Edmondson,
Present.
trustee Gray.
Present.
Actually,
Oh, and we heard that trustee Dickinson will not be able to make it tonight.
I'm gonna go Bueller.
Mm-hmm.
Bueller.
no, meeting closed session.
All right, now we'll convene to closed session. Looks like, do I have to say the time? 5:49. Yeah. Thanks.
That's a good intro.
Woo! All right, welcome, everybody. I'd like to begin open session. Please rise and put your hand on your heart. And I'll lead us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You have any pets?
I know, usually we have a wonderful student come and then we get to ask them questions. So I'll just share with you that I have 3 cats. A couple of fish. I used to have some chickens, but we think a coyote got it. Better than the cats though.
Yeah.
All right, moving on, we're glad to see everybody here. May I have an adoption of the agenda?
And can I just make a couple of notes?
Yes.
Before we go to that part? So first is just a little blurb that I want to share for the virtual participation of trustee Ariel Gray. There she is. And so this is kind of just an official thing we want to get on the record. So at tonight's board meeting, trustee Ariel Gray will participate virtually in our board meeting. Her virtual participation is governed under AB 2449, which since it's at the end of the calendar year 2025. Key difference between this version and the pre-pandemic version of teleconferencing for individual board members is that the remote location does not have to be identified on the agenda or accessible to the public. Another difference is that the rest of the board has to vote on it. Her virtual participation won't be listed on the agenda. It isn't required to be due to the timing of her illness. Trustee Gray has notified the board via the superintendent at her earliest convenience. She has just cause with an illness, one of the allowable definitions of just cause. This provision can be used no more than twice in a calendar year by any one individual board member. This is trustee Gray's first request. Trustee Gray's virtual participation will be conducted via Zoom, a 2-way audiovisual platform, and members of the public have the opportunity to engage using that same platform using the link on the board website. The board website can be accessed by going to the district website, www.suesd.org, clicking on the board tab and selecting Board of Trustees. The link will be found in the paragraph directly under tonight's board agenda and docket for convenience. The rest of the board must take action in their normal fashion, consider approving trustee Gray's request to participate in this meeting via teleconferencing due to illness. Would someone like to make a motion to approve trustee Gray's virtual participation?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I know that was
You're in.
a boring thing, but we have to do it.
Woohoo.
The other item before the board considers adopting the agenda, I'd like to propose swapping the order of items related to budget and LCAP.
Right.
Currently, the public hearing and presentation items for budget and LCAP begin with the budget. I'd like the board to consider adopting the agenda with LCAP items first, which means reversing the order of items 6A and 6B and 9A and 9B. For simplicity, a board member could simply make a motion to approve the agenda with the changes suggested by the superintendent.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the changes the superintendent just suggested.
I will second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right. So with our revised agenda, do I have an adoption of the agenda?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Moving on to report out of closed session. So this is coming from last session. Before reporting out on tonight's closed session items, I'm reporting on closed session items that were discussed after the open session at our last board meeting, May 15th, 2024. Those items included an inter-district transfer denial case, case number 2024-2502. The board upheld the appeal and thus overturned the district's decision to deny the inter-district transfer request in question by a vote of 3-2, with trustees Gray, Donnelly, and Dickinson voting to uphold the appeal and trustees Edmondson and Jackson Miller voting to deny the appeal. The other items from the May 15th closed board session were all student discipline cases, including stipulated expulsion cases, numbers 2023-2401 and 2023-2402, and expulsion case number 2023-2401. All three cases were approved unanimously by the board. Tonight's closed session, the board unanimously agreed on the special ed agreement, and the superintendent has received a positive evaluation. All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve and adopt and approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda is adopted. Now on to the fun stuff. Thanks for staying with us. We're moving on to our recognition items.
But
And
have to do roll call for
Oh.
some resolutions that are in the consent.
I'm too excited.
Thank you for that.
Trustee Jackson Miller,
Aye.
trustee Donnelly,
Aye.
trustee Edmondson.
Aye.
Trustee Gray.
Aye.
Now we're on.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Keep it up.
We were so
All right,
excited.
thanks, Jen. All right, moving on to the award for the 2023-24 Alice B. Woolsey Scholarship.
So
Yeah.
I'll make this intro very quick. All of the work we do as a governance team to support is to support the most important part of schools, and that's teaching and learning. That's where the magic is, and that's what's at the center of everything we do. With that in mind, it brings me great pleasure tonight to present the winners of this year's Alice B. Woolsey Scholarship. Miss Woolsey was a former, longtime SUESD teacher held in the absolute highest regard. In a most altruistic gesture symbolic of her dedication to youth and education, she left a sum of money in her will to be used for a perpetual scholarship earmarked for students who had previously attended school in our district and now wish to attend college. An amazing teacher, still supporting amazing, brilliant, dedicated, hardworking students that we'll meet tonight. What could be better? Applications were distributed to high schools in our areas where our students attend. And this year we could not choose between two amazing applicants, and therefore we're awarding it to both. These students both previously attended school in our district, including New Brighton School. So let's talk about our first recipient, who I'll invite to come up and say a few words to the board about their plans for college and who's supporting them here tonight. The student graduated from high school with a 4.1 GPA and served as captain of the varsity cheerleading team amongst many other endeavors. With that, I'd like to introduce to you our first recipient, Layla Mejia. Come on. What are your plans for college?
Hi, I'm going to CSU Long Beach in the fall. These are my parents.
That's why you got the.
Represent.
I'm planning on majoring in biology and I hope to become a nurse practitioner in the future.
Wow.
And I'm very grateful for the scholarship and putting it towards my goals. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got the mom and dad here tonight, right?
Yeah.
And we'd like to award you the actual.
Yeah. Show me the money.
Yep.
And here's the check.
Yeah.
Congratulations. All right.
Yeah, that's great.
Next up, our second winner completed high school with a 3.7 GPA while working for and contributing to several community organizations such as Food Not Bombs. Please welcome our second scholarship winner, Madeline Price. Come on.
Hi, I plan on going to Cabrillo in the fall, and I'm gonna be doing online school and traveling around. I really am planning on going to Australia to train for my sport, which is basically like grown-up junior guards.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
professional junior guards, which is kind of weird, but yeah. Thank you
Amazing.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Exciting. We've got
Awesome.
awards.
Congratulations.
It's great. You get to do school abroad too.
Yeah.
We can do a photo.
Wow.
Yeah, we give a photo with both of you.
Yeah,
Don't mind?
and parents, would you want to? If you really, if you really.
My kneecap, isn't it?
Hold on to the chest.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Come on in, come on in.
Okay, thank you.
Oh my gosh, an orange sweater. Yeah.
I know, yeah. My baby's coming home from her, well.
Thank you. You can come up and call. Keep us up to date on what's happening.
Yeah.
You guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, so fun. And another very fun recognition item. We're so happy to have everybody here. The recognition of the 2023-24 Community Advisor Committee Award winners.
Let's keep the positive vibes going. The Community Advisory Committee is a parent group that's an integral part of the North County SELPA, overseeing special education practices in the participating school districts in our county. Each year, they recognize outstanding performance, skill, and commitment of staff members serving students with IEPs. So many of our district staff are recognized that our Student Services Director, Carissa Lemos, has put together a presentation of the winners, which she will present for us. Carissa.
Well, thank you. I present a lot of different things to you, and sometimes they're not as fun as this. So thanks to you tonight. As Scott said, every year the CAC gives the opportunity to nominate colleagues and staff or organizations that have done an exceptional job when it comes to serving students. And so I'm very happy and very proud to present to you tonight about those in our district who have received these awards. Before I do that, I do want to thank Aisha Sajula and Laura Orantes, who are our parent board members on the CAC. So each district sends committee members to represent us, and they work very, very hard to support all families of students who have disabilities in our county. So big thanks to them for representing our district on the board. So what was really exciting to me this year is each of our sites, each student services team at each of our sites received an award this year. And so we tried really hard to get everybody in all of our pictures, but I believe if I haven't shared it with you already, there's a file that contains the videos of the presentation of those awards. Because that's always very fun. It's always a surprise, or we try hard to make it a surprise. People start to. I told Jessica Little, who's our SELPA director, you now just have to have an award anytime you go anywhere. So the Main Street team, this is what was said about them. The team at Main Street has been busy this year. Through it all, they've kept serving students and serving them well at the center. This team carries a heavy load and they do it with excellence. They're caring, patient, compassionate, empathetic, knowledgeable, and true believers in the potential and inherent goodness in all students. They're collaborative and always willing to lend each other a hand in order to contribute to the success of the team as a whole. And we have some members of that team here. This is Bill Fletcher. He's one of our social day class teachers. Some of the folks here work at all of the sites, and so they share in this award and celebration as well. So thank you. Next, we have maybe. So one cool thing is there were some extra surprises in that we had some teams receive awards, and then some individuals also received nominations by some of their colleagues for their excellent work. And Miss Laura Johnson is one of them. She is resource specialist extraordinaire at Main Street. And it was said of Laura that she's a phenomenal educator who deserves the recognition of her local community and beyond. She comes to work every morning and with the intention of supporting students in our district who have incredible needs. She sees the good in every student and values and affirms them as people and manages to pour love into each of them every day. Even on more challenging days, she still manages to see the positive in everything. Her outlook is admirable. Her connections with students are meaningful, and the impact she's had in our district is invaluable. Our district is lucky to have Laura on her team. And Laura couldn't be here. Next up, the team at SoCal Elementary. It was said of them that they are a force. They're thorough, thoughtful, organized, and deeply rooted in pursuing the best possible outcomes for students. They are creative problem solvers and exceptional practitioners. They have rolled with the ups and downs of the year in a way that is telling of their character and their commitment to serving students and supporting families. And we have a few members of that team here. Rebecca Verhoek is in the back. She's the speech language pathologist over at Sotel. We're very happy to have had Rebecca join our team this year. And then everyone else here also works there except for Bill. Santa Cruz Gardens Elementary. It was said of this team that they are small but mighty. That the team had many new members this year. They have worked diligently to become a cohesive unit and seek always to serve students first and keep them at the center. The team at Santa Cruz Gardens is collaborative and creative, often finding unique and creative ways to meet needs. Santa Cruz Gardens is truly a haven where students' strengths are celebrated and needs are seen as assets in the making. New Brighton also was a recipient of a CAC award, the team there. The team at New Brighton is a well-oiled machine. They are above all student-centered, they're thoughtful, collaborative, and an all-around joy to work with. They share the load and often collaborate on who's doing what to make sure everyone is taken care of. Every member of this team is exceptional, and we're so fortunate to have them. Miss Allie Lovell was planning to be here tonight but couldn't be. She received an award and nomination from Miss Darlene Miller, who's there and is also a member of our team. And Darlene came up with an acrostic for Allison. And so she said she is exceptional because she's accepting of all students and their abilities. She's a leader. She gives time to the community by coaching girls swimming and golf teams. An award-winning swim team, I might add. She's a listener, builds connections with students. She has integrity and models professionalism. She's smart, has strong communication, organized, optimistic, has assets to boost students' learning when they don't learn in the traditional ways. And she's non-judgmental and nice. Let's see, in the annex team, gosh, what would we do without them? Not very much. So the team in the annex are like Santa's elves, often tinkering in the background in order to make things happen. There's nothing Salma can't do or won't do to support the student services team and being able to get the job done and done well. She's a whiz with data and makes safes and CalPads play nicely on the daily. Lily keeps our files in check and more importantly, reaches our families in ways that the rest of the team sometimes can't. She's an exceptional asset to our team. Sasha couldn't be better at what she does. She's profoundly knowledgeable and keeps our sites rooted in inclusion and holistic social emotional behavior and inclusive support. Liz is a program specialist extraordinaire. She's humble, service-oriented, doing whatever is needed to support the success of our teams. Caitlin is like a unicorn of a BCBA. She's collaborative, generous with her time, energy, and expertise, and keeps our aides and staff trained, safe, and feeling supported. Vicky keeps our students healthy, but she keeps the grown-ups healthy too. She cares for all of us, body and soul, so that our entire student services team can be in tip-top shape to serve students, staff, and our community. And many of them are here tonight. I think all of them are actually. But there, I think, is one more. Sasha Talavera, our inclusion specialist, received a nomination from Miss Sama. And Sama said of Sasha that she is kind and caring support for students and staff alike. Everyone knows and feels the intentional effort she puts into checking in and checking on those in our community. Folks know that Sasha genuinely cares about our community and wants us all to succeed and grow together. So we really do have, I think, just in my humble opinion, the best team in our county. They are truly exceptional and we're so grateful to work with them. So I give you the student services team.
Yeah.
I think that would breathe me. I think that's all. That is okay.
So I just would like to say we are so grateful to everything you do. We don't get to see the daily nitty gritty of your work, but we see just the kindness, the way that you just bring such love to our district. And we're so grateful to everything that you do for all of our students, because you guys are truly thinking of all of our students' wellness, and we're so grateful. We have some awards. I'm not sure how we just hand them over or did you?
I would love to call out some names here. So let's start. Do we have some of the teams there's crossover,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So I'll just say them, and if somebody's here to represent them, come get them. Otherwise, I'll give them to the director. So first, the New Brighton Middle School Services team. Here we go. Thank you for representing for them.
Thank you.
Santa Cruz Gardens, anybody? So Cal L, we get, there we go. Main Street, another's there, Bill.
Yeah, we go.
There you go, sir. Thanks for all the work.
Please stay there. He
Oh.
has to take a picture for his wife.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
I'll let you take Laura's too, if you don't mind. Sasha, thanks for all you do and how you do it. Ally's not here tonight, so you want to take on behalf of Ally? I guess I'll give you the annex, so. Thank you guys for all you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing,
Thank you.
quite amazing.
It's lovely to see all of your faces here in person, and thank you for coming out and on an evening in June, but it's really nice to see you all, because we think we know and understand the work you do, and we value the work that you do so very, very deeply. So thanks for coming in and seeing us and allowing us to recognize you.
Yeah. All right, one more round of applause.
Yeah.
All right. All right, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Please have a wonderful evening.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Stay, but you don't.
No, have a wonderful evening.
Yeah. Good to see you.
Thank you. See you later.
Yeah, want to talk about
Yeah.
the public hearing, you know.
Oh, yeah. They wanted to go.
Know how to clear a room.
Yeah. There you go.
Some of them have to.
I didn't know I had to.
Yeah. You could tell.
I meant to say it while Carissa was still here, but I loved the PowerPoint, and that was so
Yeah.
wonderful to be able to
Yeah.
read all of that ahead of time and have it here in person. It's
Yes,
really.
agreed. I love the recognition of those. They're so fun. All right, moving on to public hearings. So I'd like, I
gonna
will
do
start
6B.
with that,
Yep.
6B. We have a public hearing regarding the local control accountability plan, the LCAP for our district. Are there any public comments?
There's
Doesn't
nothing
look
on
it.
email.
Okay. So then we just move on, right?
Do you want to just say a quick
Sure.
to you,
Yeah.
just for the record?
Yes, the local control accountability plan and the annual update come up every year. They're a plan that's written for local education agencies to be transparent about how we're serving students in the alignment of the actions and services and budget attributed to their success. So that's what we're presenting tonight, and the public should want to come in. We're happy to hear.
Right.
I think we should also add, if you don't mind, Jessica created a survey that's been on our website for public access and comment too, but
Oh, great.
there were no comments when I checked earlier. this
No,
afternoon.
never.
So, but the opportunity was there,
Great.
so.
Great.
And I had 6:53 for the start, and if you're closing now, 6:54 for the closing of the public hearing.
Okay,
All right.
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the next public hearing item. The public hearing regarding the proposed 2024-25 budget for the SoCal Union Elementary District.
Starting at 6:55.
Yes, and this is proposing the 24-25 budget, making sure that we're aligned with the needs of the district and the students. And so forth, and we do the best we can to estimate looking forward for the year. So
Great. So it looks like no one is in the room. Are there any public comments on email?
Nothing on email.
All right. So we,
Turning or closing that public hearing at almost 6:56.
all right, thank you. All right, moving on to the public hearing for the SoCal Education Association, SEA, Joint second collective bargaining agreement proposal for negotiations.
So I'm just gonna tee up 6C and 6D together first and then
Great.
address them each individually. So just gratitude to both labor groups. I feel like we're in a really good place. Not only with the content and the approach towards negotiations, but even in our scheduling and flow. Like when we talked with both groups this time around about, hey, should we be doing anything in summer? Everybody felt like we were in a good place. We'll wait till we get more thorough budget information, after the state budget is approved, and then we'll get negotiation sessions on in the fall to start. So just feels good to kind of have our rhythm and everything and everybody being in sync with that. So with that kind of as the lead up, I'll focus this public hearing on 6C for SEA. And as you saw, there are articles listed there. And so how we do it is a joint approach, which means SEA gives us some items that they want to negotiate on. We give them some, and as long as everybody agrees, then that's the group that we put together rather than doing two separate sunshine proposals. It's allowable and just seems to make more sense if the groups are in sync with each other. We can do up to 3 each plus compensation. It's kind of always acknowledged that compensation is going to be an item, so it's 3 plus compensation. So you can see that for SEA, it's the term of the agreement, which is up. And then Article 6 is employee assignments and transfers. Article 7 is hours of employment. Article 8 is class size. Article 13, compensation, which I mentioned, and Article 15, retirement. And there'll be an action item on this later, so I won't regurgitate it when we come back around. Those are the items we're proposing to negotiate on this year for SEA.
Great. Do we have any public comment in the room? Maybe not. Anything on email?
Nothing on email.
All right. Close it.
Closes that one. Boom. All right, and back to CSEA. Very similar setup in terms of doing the joint proposal. So the articles for us and CSEA, Article 6, pay and allowance. Article 7, employee expenses and materials. Article 8, health and welfare benefits. Article 15, professional growth. And then Article 20, the term of the agreement, are the items that we have agreed to negotiate on once we schedule our sessions and begin negotiations in the fall.
All right. Any public comment in the room for the CSEA collective bargaining agreement? Doesn't look it. Anything on email?
Nothing on email.
All right. Public session is closed. Any public communications regarding this meeting? Anything on email?
Nothing on email.
Anything in the room for public comment?
Thank you very much. I'm a recipient of the amazing Community Advisory Community Awards. I got a chance to watch on YouTube, so it's streaming well.
Oh, good.
My partner and I were on our way down, couldn't make it in person nonetheless. It's been absolute pleasure being a part of service, if you will, for this amazing community and the pupils that we got a chance to serve. I'm grateful for Carissa, the most for recognizing the individual cogs in wood as well as the team concept. The Security Elementary School District Student Services team. I am moving on, but nonetheless, I am grateful for this opportunity to have served again, be a part of the greater realm, if you will, of being community servants for the people and by the people. No pun intended. So again, thanks, Carissa, for recognizing us. Ladies and gentlemen, of this amazing leadership and entity. Thank you for continuing what you're doing and being a community member as well as a employee with the district. I will still come because I'm invested. I want to know what's going on, not just what I'm seeing on the walls on my school site. Love the amazing work. We're watching, we're listening, we're inspired. We, the community and the staff at the school district. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Wow, been great to get to know you. Stay in touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. All right, moving on, if there's no public communication, no more public communications, standing reports.
So with tonight's robust agenda and timelines of mine, our amazing assistant superintendents and I mindfully forego our reports tonight. And for item 8B, there's no identified CSEA or SEA reps report tonight, but both associations wish everybody a happy summer.
Wonderful. All right, happy that everyone's enjoying their summer.
Mhm.
Moving on to trustee reports.
I have nothing to report.
I think the only thing I have to report was how wonderful New Brighton graduation was. And
Oh.
so we all had the pleasure of attending the New Brighton graduation and getting to celebrate our kiddos and the staff and the end of a wonderful year. So thank you to everyone for that.
Yeah,
And happy summer.
agreed. It was a wonderful graduation.
You did a great speech, by
Yeah.
the way. Your speech was really wonderful. Yeah,
Thank
totally
you.
aligned with the whole day's spirit.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. All right, that looks like it. So moving on to presentations. And let's start with the presentation for the LCAP, the Local Control Accountability Plan.
Great, well,
Yeah.
thank you. So this is a year worth coming, but just before I get started with my presentation, I just wanted to say out loud for anybody who's in the ether, who wants to kind of follow along with us tonight. The LCAP presentation is on page 455 through 480 of the board docket, and it is a broad brush overview. The annual update is on pages 481 through 528, and this represents the planned actions as well as how we did over the last 3 years. And then the new LCAP is on pages 352 through 617, and this plan represents the first year of a new 3-year cycle. So sometimes it's hard for everyone to understand, like, what are each of these things and what do they represent? So I thought that might be helpful. Also noted to the board and available are 3 additions to tonight's presentation, specifically to the 3-year LCAP. First, that there was an omission of some graphs that represent the budget, which is known as the LBOP, the budget overview, the Local Control Accountability Budget Overview for Parents. And that's 3 pages, and the board has that, and there's also a copy for public. On page 10 of the 2024 LCAP and page 541 of the docket, there's a technical assistance table that the SELPA has provided some input on, and just to say that we do have a plan that we're working on with our student services team. And then the third note, and it's very minor, on page 12 of the plan and 543 of the docket, BIG is an acronym which stands for Business Information. These are just some things that the board and the public may want to know. All right, so here we are. While we talk about the plan every time we meet, this is the beginning of the annual update, and my pleasure to present. The first thing that I wanted to be able to do is just talk a little bit about our presentation objectives. The first, just the process for the LCAP, and while I know you hear about it every year, sometimes it's nice just to be able to remember. Then also to remember who the plan is for, the identified students that stand behind this plan, the budget alignment, district goals, and the overview of those, the engagement of educational partners component, the progress made related to the goals by each action, and then some academic data. And those are all associated with the 23-24 annual LCAP. And then from there, we'll be digging into the overview for the 24-25 LCAP and that projected 3-year plan. In that, we'll just look at a quick little analysis. It's a single page, what worked well, what's going to stay the same, and then some shifts that we need to make. All right. Oops. So these 2 systems I'm working on have different ways of maneuvering, so just bear with me. So the LCAP process. The LCAP process is really fairly simple, although it takes a long time. It's really about comprehensive strategic planning. And that is to, really make sure that we're looking at a lot of information really carefully, but also really strategically. Like, we don't get to pick and choose the data that we like. The next thing is to have really meaningful stakeholder or educational partner engagement. And we do that lots of different ways. We do that through surveys, we do that through meetings, we do that through town halls, you know, lots of different ways. And we actually have now, as the superintendent mentioned earlier, a tab on the front page of our website that lets the community take a look at the draft as we write it. To be able to give us input. And that's the first time that we've done that. And it was a great idea that Scott had. I love it. And then the last component of the LCAP process is to really ensure that we are being accountable to the plan and that we're being compliant with what the state requires. And the state requires us to serve specific students and to align resources that make sense to serve them, not what we want to do. So those are the legal requirements of the LCAP. The next part is just how is LCF funding related to student groups? So these are our student groups. And this was the information that was posted on the dashboard the last time it was published. So numbers fluctuate a little bit up or down. But essentially, the 1,600 students were represented at the dashboard time. We had at that time, almost 32% of our students were socioeconomically disadvantaged. Just over 10% were listed as English learners, and just less than 0.1% as foster youth. And those are the student populations that LCFF asked us to focus on most acutely. The box on the right-hand side represents our district demographics. And so where we have students who may appear to be in a marginalized group, sometimes we can see that in that demographic information. So we can see in that in those boxes some of the items that were on the left-hand side, but we can also see the race and ethnicity identity information. And that's where we also too can see sometimes gaps in achievement. So those are good things for us to be really attentive to as we write a plan for the coming year. So how do we engage educational partners? This is a really big component. I think I've spoken to the board more and more about this over the past couple of years. It used to be that the local control accountability plan really was a document that helped hold a district accountable. And it held the district accountable to the state. But the state could see that that's not really who we're accountable to. We're accountable to our population, our community, the students we serve, the families within our community. And sometimes our business partners. And so the state of California has made it really clear to school districts that you have to go beyond seeking compliance. You have to go out and really look at information and serve the community that you serve every day. So we do ask caregivers, we ask family members how they think and feel about what's happening in the school district. We ask our certificated staff, we ask our classified staff. They all have different representative jobs and points of view about what happens in our district. So it's really important that we get that information. We ask our administrative staff, board of trustees. You are commenting about this plan pretty regularly, twice a month usually, which not all boards do. And I think that that's really valuable. We ask students how they feel. And that now is a required component. We've done that for a few years, but I think that's really important to hear about students' thoughts and feelings. And then we had advisory councils, and the English learner advisory councils in our district are one representative group. This is not a list of like limited people. We do talk to other people. We talk to the County Office of Education. Many of them are our partners with special education, with ed services, business services, and all of those kinds of things. But it's really important that the ones that are listed on this presentation are the ones that the state law requires and that we make sure we do. Okay. The next slide really is just about kind of some information about what educational partners tell us. Certainly not all. We have lots of open boxes and we have lots of questions. But if you want to know like who is answering these, the left-hand side will tell you who's answering them. Are they English learner families? Are they families that see themselves as having students that struggle? We don't identify that, they self-identify. So these are all really important things to know when we're looking at the data that we're collecting. Families of students who are challenged, but successful in their challenge. You know, we want to know about how those families are feeling. And what do they say? So they say 92% of them say they feel welcome and respected when they interact with their child's school. They receive an effective level of communication by 91%. They have opportunities to share their thoughts and opinions by 80%. They believe their child's talents and strengths are known and developed 59%, but 29% don't know because they're not in the classroom. My student has meaningful access to standard-based materials and activities and resources, 86%. My student receives high quality and needs responsive instruction, 71%. So there's some information here that tells us that there are areas for us to grow. The next one is a question that we ask our staff. And that is directly related to the LCAP goal 1, and basically said this was our goal. We wanted to be able to serve all students and for them to receive equitable, inclusive, culturally responsive, and rigorous high quality instruction with standards-based curriculum that promotes life, college, and career readiness. Do you think that we did the things that made that happen? And we specifically said, what improved actions could we take? So not just like, how did we do, but what more could we do? And so one of the things that they said was expanded learning time, which is our ELOP plan. Keep doing that. That's really great for us and it's really great for our kids. They said we really want to see some supplemental materials in math. We want to see supplemental materials in English language arts, specifically with like writing conventions, grammar, some of those foundational skills, vocabulary development. And they really want to say, we want to relate to our parents. We want our parents in our classrooms. We want them to participate in our schools. We want them to feel like they're active partners. We want to know ways to do that. And then language intervention. So these are all things that our staff have said, like, if we want to really do this better, these are the things we should add. The next question we asked them was related to goal 2. And basically this is about data-driven instruction. Like if we want to give high quality instruction, what more do we need? They said grade level planning is something that they really wanted more of. And that is for 2 reasons. One is some of our schools, because our numbers have dropped a little bit, some schools have 1 teacher that teach in a grade. And that ability to collaborate with just yourself is not really collaboration. And so to look at different ways of doing that across the district. The other thing that they said was subject matter planning. And this is probably more in alignment with number 1, the middle school, but also 2 in areas where we have newer curriculum, like science as an example at the elementary schools. They really like the coaching and mentoring that we've added. So if you're a new teacher, you have access to a mentor for your first 2 years. But also if you're a teacher who's desiring some support, we've also included that for teachers that are not brand. And they really feel like that is something to continue. Collaborative data cycles is another big one, and that is help us to look at the data about our students so we can really look at our instruction differently and make goals around our instruction, and we love to see that. The next thing that they talked about was systemic cost, and that's our coordinated services teams. And that is when we're worried about a kid, the system that we talk about the kid, we really want to do that more tightly. We really want to have some common forms. We really want to have some common actions, and we really want to have kind of some follow-up processes that are consistent. And then best practices, which are in the research. So we've been working with research-based practices for a long time. We know that some of the research now is changing. Post-COVID, we know new information, right, about student anxiety. We know some information about some student gaps in performance, and we know some things about the rewiring of the brain because of just different additions, you know, to our students' time. So those are all of the things that our staff felt were really important. And the thing that I love about that is our staff does not like hesitate telling us, like, these are things we need to do more. And we want to hear that honest truth. The next one is just it's aligned with goal 3, and this is really about school safety and family engagement. Counseling was the first thing. 67%. I think this is the highest rated item of all of the items that we've seen in any survey, and it's not surprising. Family education was another big one. It came up with families and it came up with our staff. And that was, I think that really shows that there is an intentionality between our staff and our families to work together on that. So we're creating a family education series. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Family connection strategies, and that is how do I effectively connect with families? So is there a way that I'm connecting with my families that is not just I'm sharing information, but that we have two-way dialogue. Inclusive clubs and activities. This is something another really big reading, and this is also part of our ELAP. So even though it's mentioned as separate, it's also definitely part of that. And then linkage, and that's linkage to outside resources. So if I need support with, I'm with food, if I need support with counseling, if I need support with other things, how do I link to those services? So those are the things that our staff said. Now to our students, I always think it's interesting to see what our students say. We surveyed our students in grades 3 through 8, and we said, how do you mostly feel at school? And tired was ranked number 1. And so that helps us to understand too. If we're asking you to come to school to learn and you're tired, what is it that we need to do to ensure that you feel like you're energized and you're ready to be here and you're ready to learn? But just under that, 66% mostly feel, I put two percentage symbols on there, but I must have been excited. But they feel happy. And that makes me feel good that they mostly feel happy. Smart, next, 42, respected, next, 41, excited, 36, important, 22, capable, 21, love, 17, lonely, 14, sad, 61.4 or 6.14. Sorry, I forgot the decimal. Sad 6.14. And so that's even though that's a small percentage, that still, concerns me. And then my identity is seen 18%. So that those numbers show us there's areas for us to grow and areas for us to kind of drill down. The next question, we said, I have all the materials I need for my classes. And 83% said yes, and 14% said, I don't know. What is your favorite part of school? Biggest thing is friends and socializing. Then recess and lunch, physical education, teacher, food, before and after school programs, learning new things, and sharing my ideas. So those are the things that we captured from our students' responses. We just had one data point from the California Healthy Kids Survey, which was done in 2023. So it's not new information, but we always take a look at the last information that we have. And the number of, or the percentage of students that felt connected to school in grades 5 and 7. And that was an area in 2023 where we knew that we had area to grow. And not a horrible number, but area to grow. And the person having to carry an adult at school, again, not horrible, but definitely an area to grow. An area that we really felt good about was the students feeling safe at school. And we still feel really great about that. Okay, so this is what you don't do on a PowerPoint presentation. And it's and it's certainly not intended for us to read and talk about the whole thing. But the one thing that you might know, just reading a few of the items, is that these are all of the things that we talk about all year. So when we have our LCAP update and I say 2.1 under goal 2, and you're like, okay, give me the update. These are those. Okay, so you've already heard them. And it's just a way of us, number one, going back and saying to the state, first, we do talk about these things. We do talk about all of the actions that are associated with the goals, and we do talk about whether they're working or not. And for the most part, they are working. And so each of these slides basically goes through every one of the actions in our last LCAP and says, yep, it was effective or not. And we were pretty effective. If you look at goal 2, there were lots of actions. And boy, when we were going through the LCAP this time, we were thinking, why did we do that? But we did that because so many of them offered us an ability to help students in different ways. So yes, there would be less reporting, but at the same time, there might not be some of the things that we needed to do included. I will spell out a couple of items that were not affected. So at the beginning of the 3-year plan, we said we really want to have an MTSS TOSA, which would be a multi-tiered system of support teacher on special assignment. And we did not find a quality candidate. Every time we posted, we were hopeful. And we did not find one. And our families and our staff were really crying out for some coaching support. And had we found, a good quality candidate, we certainly would have done that. So it wasn't effective. It wasn't effective because we weren't trying. It was just effective because we didn't find anybody that could meet the needs that we had. So that wasn't specifically effective for us. Another one that was not specifically effective for us is in I lost my place.
Need the page.
No, I'm good with the pages. I lost my line because I have so many lines. I apologize. Okay, so the other one which was different, it was not an ineffective practice, it was an under projected practice. So we wanted to have a 0 period so students who had ELD support or IEPs and RSP classes associated with the goals in their IEPs. We wanted them to have an elective course too. And so we added a 0 period the first year, but it really didn't serve as many students as we needed to. So over the course of those years, we went from 1 class to 3 classes. So we had under projected budget, but it wasn't because it wasn't something good to do. It was something that we needed to change because it wasn't giving us a grand enough service. So there's things like that the board will see, and they're also in the plan. Okay, so the newly adjusted goals, and the newly adjusted goals are, on my printout, it doesn't say 1, 1, 1, 1, but on yours.
There you were. Yeah.
It says 1, 1, 1, but there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first one, and they're very similar to the goals that we had in the past. And this is that all students will receive equitable, inclusive, culturally responsive, and rigorous, high quality instruction with standards-based curriculum that promotes life, college, and career readiness. That's almost exactly the same as the goal that we had before. The goal 2 is where we've made a bit of a shift. And we have at the very ending of that goal, we said with specific attention to unduplicated students. And that is for 2 reasons. One is that our unduplicated student count is one that is something that is directly called out in the LCAP, and you have to show that you're serving those students first. And then if you're serving everybody else while you're serving them, great. So we called that out specifically. And then goal 3, we separated into 2 goals. We turned them into goal 3 and goal 4. And that was for 2 reasons. One is they're completely different. And it's easier for us to maximize the data and to do some kind of root cause analysis if something's working, if we actually are more discreet about those 2 goals. So those were adjusted for that purpose. No more? How about academic data? So what we can see in it is in our academic data, first with iReady, that we saw an increase in our reading scores and a small decrease in our math scores. And we've done a lot of thinking about why that's the case, and part of that, I think I'll talk about it in the analysis section, but we've really kind of done some deep dives into that. And then we looked at the reading and math growth in each of the grade levels, with the exception of kindergarten and 6th, 7th, and 8th. And 6th, 7th, and 8th are not recorded in this because we gave them 2 assessments this year because the CASP is so long. But we'll be changing that moving forward. But it does show some interesting information. So it'll show you annual growth and cohort growth. So annual growth is 1st grade this year, 1st grade last year. The cohort growth will say 1st grade last year, 2nd grade this year. So it's the same group of kids that you're measuring over the course of a year. So we see some ups and we see some downs. Not anything that's swinging very heavily one way or the other, with the exception of grade 3 to 4 in math. You see a big swing up. And that is a 13% growth. On the next page, just some academic data, like how did kids come into a grade, and then how did they end their year? And so this graph represents that, but it also represents how did they do in what area of reading. And so the reading domains are on the bottom portion, and then the overall, like the comprehensive figures are on the top. So we can see that there were lots more red at the beginning, lots less red at the end, lots less green at the beginning, lots more green at the end. That's what we want to see. The yellow is about the same, a little larger towards the end of the year.
I'm so sorry. Do you mind just, my eyes were having trouble connecting
Yeah.
that and understanding.
Yes.
But like, which line am I looking
Okay.
at to understand this?
one.
No.
Well, I know green is good. Green means go. Sorry, no.
Just looking at my screen, like I've looked at this graph so many times, like, don't you know what I'm doing? So I'll just start it. I'll start at the top.
Thank you.
Okay, so the top line is the most recent iReady assessment in reading.
Uh-huh.
The one below it was diagnostic 1.
Okay.
So when they came into school, not at the very beginning, but around that time, we said like, where are you right now?
Got it.
So it shows us how much they grew from beginning of year until about the 3rd quarter. So it's not the end of the year because we have CASP and all of those other things. So it represents about 7 months of time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For all our students, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And the phonological awareness, do you think that's the addition of like the UFly curriculum that we
Yes.
added?
Yes.
That's amazing growth.
That really is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really nice to be able to see some of the things that you say, well, let's just work really hard at trying it and see if it does work. And it did work. And it actually, if you look at phonics, that was also part of the curriculum
Yeah.
that we've been
Yeah.
working on.
That was fun too with open house to see in the classrooms, to see the phonics things on the wall, that it's just in action. That was really neat.
That's a
Yeah.
good point.
The one thing that, this information will tell you also, is just areas where we show overall weakness. And, one of the things that we're talking about right now, and we were talking about even, yesterday, a group of teachers is really looking for how to authentically develop vocabulary, right? Because we're asking
Yeah.
students to have a high level of comprehension of fairly large concepts, right? And if they can phonologically read things, that's a good start, right? They can kind of do that. But when we're really developing vocabulary for higher level thinking, that's where our next step is gonna be.
Yeah.
So are we good with the reading one? so
Thank
far?
you.
Yeah, no,
that helped me so much. Thank
What
you.
are high frequency words?
that's a great question. So those are words where you can't really sound it out. Like,
Because
yeah, or,
only
yeah.
I work with those.
Yeah,
When you're,
My little
yeah,
guy.
you can't.
Yeah, after, before, it's hard to sound those out if you were to do.
Come up often, like
They come
a,
a lot,
if,
yeah.
and the, like those are high frequency words when you're in like kindergarten. But as you get
Oh,
older,
okay.
they're not just those. They're the ones where you're like, I don't know if I can figure out how to
Like
sound
only.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are things that if you don't know them, then you get stuck.
Yeah.
And it really changes your ability to
Like
comprehend.
door and then.
But these are really great observations, because these are things that allow us to know that, you know, when you put your attention to something, it does work. So the next graph, is just the same thing, but it's about math. Wanted to come and join us.
Yeah.
And this is where you can see, like, we really have a different result for math than we do reading. And this is not dissimilar from other districts. It's not dissimilar from other areas of the state, or even other states for that matter. But it is something that gives us an opportunity to discuss like what we're going to do. And one of the things that we found out in just looking at this information is, wow, our kids really, they did grow during the course of the year. That's really nice to see. The kids who were below grade level dropped. That's great to see too. But some of the things that really gave us some pause, our numbers and operations are really that's the building block for understanding mathematical concepts. And if only half of the students at the end of the year know how to do that, then we need to put some attention into some of those things. And so some of those things are like, do I understand base 10? Do I understand place value? Do I understand, you know, what this number of figures represents? Like how many of them? You know, and can students talk about how they're thinking about math so that in ways that we can understand how to serve them? So just really kind of talking about those math foundations, just like we talked about those reading foundations. Other questions? You know, it's a lot. I tried to not put a lot of stuff in here, but you know, I get really excited about it.
And I'm sorry, just remind me of the, so the state standards for math, it's science that's the new one.
Yes.
But with this, the math standards, we have a textbook that we're working with.
We have Pearson investigations that we've had for a while, but we have a new math framework for the state of California.
That's just a little bit about that. That's what I was trying to remember. Thank you.
Yeah, so the math frame, the standards didn't change. So the standards stayed the same, but the framework changed. And so what the framework does is it basically says, like, these are all the standards, and this is how they used to fit together. And this is what we thought made sense, like sequentially and kind of, and how the idea behind them and the way that we talked about thinking about math used to be this way. The framework, the new framework says, well, we're thinking about it differently. We want kids to be able to say this about math and to think this about math and do it in these sequences, which is different than what we were doing before. But interestingly, when you ask a teacher, and we talk to teachers, I'm going to be working on scope and sequence with the teachers for the next 2 days. One of the things that they say is, you know what, our math curriculum, you know, is out of order. Well, how about that? That's one of the same things that the state saw when they were rewriting the framework. So that helps us to say, oh, well, we can rework our scope and sequence and we can match it against this framework. And if we need to bring in something else, then we'll know exactly where it's supposed to go.
Yeah,
So
that's great. I love that you guys are thinking that way
yeah.
to try to work with these numbers. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot to think about.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
So this is just some information by group, and this is something that the superintendent and I take a lot of time looking at, because we worry, right? Like, should groups of students be doing not as well as other groups of students? And the goal is no, right? The goal is to not have that. And to see, like, where are we making growth? Where are we not making growth? Is everybody making growth? If everybody's making growth, the gap's still there, right? And so there are areas, you know, of this data by group that say, you know, like, things are going up, you know, there are some really good things, but like, as an example, in reading, non-EL students had a high upswing in reading, and the English learners didn't. So like, what was missing in that? So I wonder to myself, could some of that be that when we're doing some of our phonological awareness and our decoding work that we're not doing integrated ELD at the same time. Right? So could be just something to think about, right? Because we're spending a lot of time on youth line, we're spending a lot of time on heavy reading. So it's just a question, and we'll keep probing that. But this information, does tell us, that there are areas where, students with disabilities are doing better. We see some really, interesting things with regard to gender in this information. So, what we see, females are doing better with reading and males not as much. We do see, that females are staying the same in math, and then their male counterparts are dropping a little bit. So what's happening with our males in school? Like, is there just something that we need to know? Because there's some commonalities in there.
Spaceman Spiff.
Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh, thank you.
I thought you meant flying away.
Thank you for the.
I was like, do you want me to put it in the office?
Yes.
But these are things that we look at all the time, right? Because this is exactly the reason that the LCAP exists, right? Who is not getting what they need. Okay. So then the next slide, and again, just a broad brush, this is the year-end analysis. And some things that we were able to see. One of the things that we know, and this is not the boastful, space, right? But we do better than our county, and we do better than our state in subject matters tested by the CASP. And that is something that is neither good nor bad. It's just something that is. There is a strong alignment with the goals and actions that were associated with that budget. And we could see that because there were that were ineffective. We have, there's an overall growth in reading and not in math, and we're looking at ways to address that. The gaps persist, and we can see that with our low SES English learners and Hispanic youth in special education in math specifically. Low SES females, Hispanic, and students with disability in reading. Parent engagement strategies, they need improvement, especially for unduplicated students, because I don't think that the family response would have been so high if that hadn't been the case. The attendance increased by 1.9% this year, which obviously increases the ADA and makes us all feel great. And superintendent and the schools have done a lot of great work with that. And then the school climate surveys, we don't have strong regular samples. So we don't have 3 per year per school, which would like to have a little bit more information about. Suspension data remains lower than the state average, which is very good. Restorative practices works. And just an increased number of students being identified at high risk are being served through our student services team, and some of them are here tonight. So just some shifts that need to be made. The focus on the whole child and adult wellness. I mean, that's just something that we know to be true. We don't want kids to be sad. We don't want them to be tired. We don't want them to be any of those things. We want to be able to address that. Design district-wide processes that support kind of all of the initiatives being a coherent initiative, right? So they're not going to be disparate parts. Like, we're all working towards achieving, so that students' achievement gaps can be reduced, right? All of that is true. The student experience is really our next step. Like, we want to understand how our students feel at school differently. Shadowing them, asking them. Christine and I were just talking about ways to do ad hoc groups at school to bring in kids just to say, let's talk about what school is like for you. And just to do that more regularly and with more intention. Increased access to literacy and numeracy foundational skills. We could see that in the data. Continuing the ELAP program. We could see that as definitely a desire and a need. to revisit the assessment. The year-long assessment calendar is, we don't know if we have false negatives or false positives sometimes because we give the CAS right around the end of year assessment. And so there's a little test fatigue. And we know that's true. To really look at research-based practices, to continue to work with the stewardship team. The stewardship team was born out of what was the district leadership team and is really a productive and articulate group, so that we know that when we're talking about systems change and when we're talking about reading foundations, when we're talking about math foundations and all of that, that those are key players at each of the sites that can bring those ideas back to their teams and say, like, let's talk about this more further and let's make some action. And then change our collaboration practices. So that changed actually our Friday PD schedule to focus on deeper collaboration across the district. And then look at a long-term or year-long family engagement education series. And so that is going to be something that will be ongoing each month through the next year. Okay, so that was just the broad brush. Any questions about just the presentation itself?
Great, that was a good presentation. I'm stuck on tired. The high percentage of kids that are tired, that would have an effect on their learning. So, I mean, I don't expect you to have the answer, but why do you think they're tired?
I think a couple things. I think, and these are assertions, I'm gonna make some assertions.
No, right, yeah.
I do think that our work with families to talk about what like family habits might be, might address some of that. Some of it might be nutrition related, it might be access to food, it might be,
What about on their
sleeping,
phone? Yeah, on their phone
yeah,
until 2 a.m.
technology use. It could be a lot of those. What we find just based on research is that kids spend much more time on technology than they do sleeping. And so my guess is that that's not untrue for our students. I guess that there's some correlation between, I'm saying I'm putting my phone to bed, and am I really putting my phone to bed? Because my mom said so. So just kind of thinking about some of those things and maybe some family strategies to help support families with how to more closely keep their eye on that. And I think also too is just, kind of looking at ways in which we can engage more students in the breakfast program. I think that would also, that would be something that I think would make a difference as well.
Thank you.
It's interesting. I mean, I totally hear that and seeing the percentage of them who are retired, but also I love also seeing like their love for the physical activity in school. And I'm glad okay, still having the energy for the socialization and the physical energy, and kids are so honest. I mean, thank goodness, they're, and I just wanted to say, I love how the presentation started with really our why, so everything that we've heard back from students, families, staff, so the why, the what worked, what we can build on, and why then we're making the changes. So I'm excited. Yay, let's keep going.
I really like the thread of continuing to investigate student experience with interviews, walkthroughs, student shadows. That feels like a lot like our equity work, and we're kind of applying what we learned there to our LCAP investigation students. I love that. And I'd like to second, just as a parent, the testing. Here, let me find this bullet. And I know that we were thinking about that, the test fatigue. We were thoughtfully, I remember we had a meeting with the calendar and we were looking at when are we doing the CASP? When are we doing the iReady? When are we doing all these things that we have to do? But we're trying to think about how do we accomplish that without having it feel like the students are taking tests the entire year.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple solutions. The solution that is probably more aptly applied is to do a first like a first trimester and a second trimester assessment. And it would be like midway through the second trimester. Wait, midway through the third trimester instead of at the end of the third trimester. So you're not doing first, second, and third.
Mhm.
And the first is with all your other beginning of year assessments, and the last is with all your other CASP assessments. So kind of be staggered a tiny bit, not a lot at the beginning, because you still want their information to inform instruction, and you want to know what students know how to do. It also guides My Path, which is the iReady program of lessons that are built in. But that second one is where that's the sweet spot, and really finding the right place for that. One thing that we do know is that our teachers really love that information when they're doing their report cards, because they can show families a report like, this is exactly how your student's doing right now.
Mhm.
And so, it's just that
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah. And I think for me, a huge takeaway from the LCAP is that we're truly thinking about what's the student's experience of school? How does it feel? And we're really getting a lot of data on that, because that is when kids feel good, they learn better.
Yeah.
And that's really specifically what we want for these groups.
Yeah.
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 So I like that we're thinking that way.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we all feel like
Yeah.
that's who we serve, right? So that's what we're gonna do. So attached to this is there are the two updates. Sorry, I did get to the end of the presentation. I just didn't go through the slides enough. So the next plan is the annual update, and the annual update is very simple. It says, these were our 3 goals. This is how we did. And that's exactly what was in the presentation. It said that these are the things that were effective. These were the things that weren't as effective. And so that's a relatively short plan. That's 51 pages. And in it is a lot of data. And it's data that, some of it's really good data. Some of it's not as exciting, I would say. I like all data, but for everyone, not so much. But I would say that what it does do is it tells us 2 things. One is we chose good metrics. We were able to track those metrics. So the second thing it tells us is, were we able to achieve the goals that we set to achieve? Did it give us the outcome that we wanted? In most cases, it gave us the outcome that we wanted. And that's what the state really wants us to be able to say is, did it do what you thought it was going to do, or did it not? The next plan is the 24 plan, and that one starts on page 532. I guess I should go back. Do you have any questions about the annual update? It's a lot.
We're changing our strategy with the TOSA. We're gonna not, or in the.
We're not. We're
Yeah.
gonna in the LCAP that you'll see for the next documents coming up. We've really tried to reassign funding so that we could allocate resources differently for that. And so there are a couple of things that we added to take that money and use it more effectively. And that's inclusive of some of our counselors were paid out of one-time money, that money's gone. And so we want to keep counselors because that's what everybody said that they wanted. So some of that money is actually going to be going towards counseling.
Great.
Yeah. So
We like that.
yeah. Yeah. So while it didn't work before, it's going to work for us now.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions about that annual update?
I had a question, Ted's question about the kids being tired, those responses, being tired, being happy, did the kids write them in, or was it like a list of choices that they picked
There's
from?
2. That's a great question. Thank you for answering. So they can select one that is in there, or they can add one.
Okay.
So they can add anything that they like. And I think there was a question, there was one of the answers that was about, it was in the exact same area, but I didn't put in one of the terms. And I can't remember which one it is. I definitely can tell you later. But they put in one of the terms. I don't think it was sad. I'm sure I put in sad, but it might have been one of the other ones that they had ranked. But tired was one that was in there.
Okay. And then on the math, I know we're doing better than the county and the state. It does seem like there's quite a bit of room for improvement. What are some of the ideas for that? Are we contemplating additional instruction time in math? Like how do we make some the other direction progress? I know, the decline was very small, so that's, the decline itself might not be that statistically significant, but it was pretty low to begin with too. So how do we, what are the ideas around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes to, when we were looking at the, that kind of bar graph. And if you look at the math bar graph and you look at the components that are tested under math, and that numbers and operations bar, that's what like kind of the simplest form of math expression is in that numbers and operations section. If only half of the kids know how to do that every year, then they can't build on to the next skills.
Right.
So that's where we're going to be putting a lot of our attention into those numbers and operations. And that will go to two things. One, it'll go to some math foundations supplements like we looked at for reading, which is where we found UFly and Haggerty, and that created a gain in reading in those foundational skills. And then what we'll also be taking a look at too is some math strategy in terms of best practice. So Jo Bowler is a book that we're looking at right now. She's got a new book out that we're taking a look at, and we'll be looking at with the scope and sequence team tomorrow. And then there is another that's called Mathematical Mindsets, by the way. It's really good. And then there is also another book that we're looking at in terms of instructional practice with regard to math, and that is how do you set up your classroom, the entire setting of your classroom, the way you ask questions and the way that you display information that is for a mathematical sensibility. And so those two things, the second one that I referred to is being used in Santa Cruz City schools. They've just rolled it out and they really like it, and the teachers think it's very user friendly. And so I'll be looking at a team or looking at that with a team tomorrow. So those are the places we're going to make our start with trying just to get those foundational math numbers up. And once we can get those numbers up, I'm convinced that we can bring the other numbers up, because once you understand that, you can build your way up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I also just like to add that, as Jessica had alluded to, this is a statewide and countywide focus. So as such, some of the folks that work with Jessica's group, the educational leaders in the county, are forming a countywide initiative on math. Everybody's having the same challenge, right? And so there's going to be a concerted effort next year in the entire county. Each district will have like a math leadership team. And so Jessica will be able to bring you reports on that too, so we can pool our resources, pool the minds in the county and and collaborate and focus on this problem together, in addition to what we're doing in our own LCAP.
And what is the kind of general mindset around shifting instructional time so there's more on math?
Yeah, I mean, the general rule of thumb is that there's an hour of math instruction daily, and by grade. I don't know that more gets you a better result. I think different gets you a better result. So quality instruction with quality materials could be longer, could be same amount of time. I think it's just really taking a look at, do we have the right stuff in the right spaces to serve the students well? And I think the other thing too, about the more might be better, is we do offer math classes at every one of our schools in our ELOP program. And those are kind of first served by your underrepresented students and our students that are more marginalized classifications. And so that extra time does exist before and after school. So I think because we've offered that now for almost 2 years, I do feel like the supplemental materials and looking at the instructional practices differently are going to be where we're gonna leverage more of a result. Okay, all right. Okay, so then we're now into the local control accountability plan for the 24-25 school year, just like the past plan. It just gives you a general overview of the district at the beginning. It has a section that is reflections for annual performance. A lot of the reflections of annual performance you would have seen in the annual update. So it's more of a narrative kind of version of what you saw in the annual update. But it just asks you to like think about all of that again. So some of it is a bit redundant. There was a few more data points in there with regard to median numbers and things like that, but not a lot more. Once you get past that section of kind of looking at what the data has shown, there is like little sections of like, what did it tell you? Like, what were your challenges? You know, what do you think went well? Those are all things we explained in the annual update as well. The reflections, part of that piece that's called technical assistance is one of the notes that I provided to the district board members, and that was just that we do have a report that the student services department puts together, and it is a progress monitoring report with regard to students with disabilities and how we're serving them. And so I will include this for the second reading for the board. And then the next section is comprehensive support and improvement. We don't have any student or any schools that fall in this. And this is one schools have really been underperforming or not showing enough growth in specific areas or for some specific students. The next section is engaging educational partners. And this is something that we've talked a lot about tonight. Who do we talk to? What do we do with them? And then this year it's different than the last plan. The state has asked us in every single goal and action area, what did the educational partners, how did they influence it? And so basically you say, well, in the staff survey, we could, we had enough information where we continued this action, or the family said this and we decided to add this action. So that's what is a very large portion of this plan. And it's all the same things that we talked about in our presentation. We heard this, we did this. We heard this, we did this. Then the next section is just the goals and actions. Just like it was spelled out in the past plans, the goals at the top, what the state priorities are under that. And then how are we going to measure it? Those are the metrics. So, for goal 1, walkthrough tool data, just like we talked about, we want to know about the student experience. CAST data, we've got to use that. iReady will continue to use. The social studies adoption, the feedback that I got from the county was like, you can't put an adoption in there because you haven't, you haven't done it yet. You can't just say because you're going to do it that it counts. But what it does do is it says all of our students will have access to this new curriculum, and they will have access to relevant social studies, and that's been really important to our district teams. So we don't want to ever stray from what we know our commitments are. Then the actions table is below, and that tells the board like these are the things we're going to do, just like we said 3 years ago, and this is how much money they're going to cost. The last column on the right hand side says contributing, and if you want to know what that means, I will tell you. Because a lot of people say you don't give me any description before that box comes up, so I don't know what that means. What that means is this specified and targeted for a specific group of underserved students solely? So is it for unduplicated students? If it says yes, contributing, that means yes, it's for that targeted group. If it says no, it means it's for everybody and them.
Got
it. And then you get into goal 2. Goal 2 is exactly the same. So it just goes through our metrics, goes through the actions, goes through how much each of those actions will cost, whether they're contributing actions or not. And then the same for goal 3 and 4. And so just like what we talked about we were doing, it all got incorporated. We did include a couple of things in goal 3 that we had not included before. One was the facilities report, and that's the FIT report. Because we do so much work on our facilities, we felt like it was really important to include that we keep our schools in good standing. It's part of having safe campuses for kids. And then we had goal 4, and that's the same. The one thing I wanted to say was that we do have relatively small attendance for a lot of our parent group work. So our goal is to increase the percentage of attendance. But on 3 of these bullet points, I said increase attendance by nothing percent. So I will actually include the percent. It was just my fingers were going and
Right.
the number didn't go in.
Good goal.
It's a good goal to have it go up by percent.
Mhm.
But we do actually have a percent in mind, and we'll include that.
Okay.
And then the next sections of the plan really just talk about like very contributing action oriented. Like it just pulls those out. Like if it said it was contributing action, like it's for a specific group of students, that's where the next section comes into play, because it says basically, what's your action? Who's it for? Why did you do it? And is it for a whole school, or is it for part of a school, or is it for all schools? That's new. That didn't used to be the case before, and the state really said like, no, you have to tell us. You have to tell us exactly. So that starts on page 38 of the plan. And that's page 569 of the docket. And I love that they do that. I hate putting it in because it just takes a ton of time, but I really like that they do it because it really keeps our goals very clear. And then there are 2 that are very specific for unduplicated students, and one is the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant Program that has to go to unduplicated first. It's not to go to anybody else first. And then the Outdoor Education Scholarships. So those 2 are very, very specific. And then in all of those light blue and dark blue lines is where you actually see all of the actions for each of the goals, the student groups that they serve, whether they're contributing or not, the scope of them, all of that. And this is really intended for not just the board, but for the general population to be able to see. If we just wanted to take a look at a couple of pages, what could tell us a lot of information about how the money is being spent. And that's what these pages do for our community.
I'm so grateful. One thing I'm noticing is that we're putting a lot of money towards staff, because that's how the kids make the connection. That's, getting into the garden, having the campus supervisor, the counseling,
Yeah.
the ELD support person. I mean, I really like that I'm noticing that.
Yeah. I mean, as we're working on the plan, and we're collecting the data, and we're saying like, who is going to do this?
Yeah.
Right. Like
Yeah.
classroom teachers do a lot. Our campus supervisors do a lot. All of these people do a lot, but also we have to pay them to do that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is where we get to highlight that.
Yeah.
And then just the last section is the contributing actions table. Again, it's duplicative, but it just pulls it out again. And then at the very end of the long report, you will get to see if there's any carryover. And I think the board will be happy to see that we spend the money we say we're going to spend. Any questions? It's a lot.
Kind of took my questions as we went.
Yeah.
So thank you for answering.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no questions. Just a comment. I love how you broke goal 3 into goals 3 and 4. I think that
Yeah.
really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it is a lot to digest, even having read it already, but then when you hear it and you understand the explanation, it is an impressive amount of work. So kudos to both
Yeah.
of you
It
and
takes
your
all of us.
teams.
Yeah.
But knowing how much it impacts not just the students in our unduplicated groups, but everyone. It's a really important plan. It really guides the entire district. So no questions, just appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, seconded.
Great. Okay, that's it for me.
All right, thank you for that robust explanation.
Yeah.
And I do love that we do the LCAP bite.
Mhm.
So a lot of that I felt like I'd seen,
Yeah.
but it's wonderful to just see it in total and realize, wow, that's big work we're doing. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
thank you.
exciting. All right, thank you for that. That's just presentation.
Yep.
Moving on to the presentation of the proposed 24-25 budget.
Okay, and that's me. Okay, it's up there. Let's hope I can coordinate my finger and the clicker at the same time. and-
Feel your pain.
I can just say for the record, there was no comment on the email and obviously no
Oh,
comment
great.
on
Oh,
public, just for the record.
Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about the 24-25 proposed budget.
Do we know the page number on the docket?
I think it's 344.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's start off with the NYP projection factors. I like to always kind of run through this first, so that way when we get into the numbers, we kind of know how the numbers, I got to my numbers, basically. So luckily at the May revise, we saw a little bit of an increase of COLA to about 1.07% for current year or for 24-25 compared to the 0.76 that they had originally landed on right before the May revise. 24-25, I used the 2.93%.
Thank you. Sorry. I had the wrong page.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
It's in here twice.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know where to jump to.
okay. And then for 25-26, I used 3.08% COLA. And all three of these COLAs for all 3 years were recommended by school services as well as a common message. So going on into the assigned funds that you'll see in SACS, when you look at the report, I went ahead and I signed another 250,000 for 24-25 for any additional sped costs. Because we have been seeing, rise in, needs for the students. And so I thought, might be a good idea. Let's just put the $250,000 in. If we don't use it, great. But if we do need it, at least it's assigned. In 25-26 and 26-27, I also added $100,000 in case we see a dip in the COLA. We don't know what's going to happen in 25-26 or in 26-27. And I also put $100,000 in there for textbooks and assigned as well. As far as projecting enrollment, as of last week, we're doing pretty good. We seem to be a little bit above the mark from our graduating class. So we had about 208 students graduate. And as of last week, we're about 218 students that we have registered. Now, keep in mind, some of those students, yeah, I know, fingers crossed. Keep in mind, we do have a large increase of TK students, being now that, the age is younger, we have a lot of the TKers versus kindergarten. So we're seeing that shift now. And so we do have some of the TKers that are a little bit younger. So we also have to kind of take that into consideration when it comes to, funding and so forth. But we are going in the right direction. So we're super hopeful with that. Also part of my projections is SPED contracting. So we were fortunate to be able to hire a couple SLPs that we have originally been contracting out for. So that's a savings to the district. So that's amazing. Krista and the team, kudos to them for recruiting, and also another in-house OT that was originally contracted out for as well. So that's what we'll see a shift with our 5,000 expenses into positions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
And so and then along with the TK increase, we also have to keep that ratio. So we have a 20-to-1 ratio because we have the summer babies. So
Mhm.
with that, we have to account for 3 additional aides. Because our TK classes we have more TK classes, we need more aides. So that was another thing that we had to factor into the budget. Step and column is the general 1.5% year over year. And then, of course, in our out years, I am reflecting reductions to help offset the deficit spending for the district, whether it be reductions that will need to happen or attrition. So, is there any other questions for that page? Okay.
Just that's so exciting that we're filling those positions through our district. I mean, I remember like a year ago, we were talking about that, and to hear it
Yeah.
in action, it's just so exciting.
Yeah, Chris has been doing a great job
Wow.
with recruiting for the department. So
Yeah.
it's really awesome. So
Mhm.
kudos to her.
Because it's a great way to save money too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, because the contracting out is so expensive.
yeah.
I appreciate that you assigned 100,000 to the COLA, and maybe that's something that always happens, but I'm just really noticing like, if the proposed budget this year is at 1.07, but then it's closer to 3 the next 2 years, and we don't know what's gonna happen. So, and I know
Just
100K can
share.
go really, right, I know
Yeah.
100K can go really fast, but still like assigning it and protecting it.
Just a little
Feels
something.
good.
Yeah, because based on this year, it was like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of be on the safe side with that.
Yeah.
So see if I can. Page. Okay. So this right here is showing us our revenues for unrestricted and restricted. As you can see, the LCFF revenue for this year is about 17.6 million, close to about 17.7. And then 25-26 is going to go to about 17.6. And then we're going to see a little bit of an uptick in 26-27. Again, keep in mind, budget is constantly shifting. So these are estimates based on projection of enrollment as well. And with ADA, I also projected 93.76% for 24-25, and then ticking up a little bit to about 94%, low 94% for 25-26, and about mid 94% for 26-27. I didn't want to project too high, again, just to be on the safe side. Our federal revenue, state and local, are going to remain relatively the same. You'll see that other states a little bit higher. That's where also we have STIRS on Behalf that sits in there. This year, STIRS on Behalf was estimated to be about 700,000, whereas in 24-25, the estimate's up to about 900,000. And that's that weird transaction where we have to book it in revenue, but then we also just book the expense. So it's in and out, but it still shows an increase to our state revenue. And then you'll see our total projected revenues along the bottom right there, which remains relatively the same. You'll see a little bit of an uptick in 26-27 with the total projected revenue, but not too much of a shift.
You guys mind if I close the door just a little?
Yeah.
You're getting cool. Okay.
On the right page. So this slide just shows you our unrestricted proposed budget. It shows you the budget, expenses, the deficit spending, which we're still working on reducing. As you can see, as we get to the out years, we're able to reduce a little bit more. It shows our beginning balances and our ending balances. So the beginning balances, again, they're estimates because we're in estimated actuals right now. And they're relatively close to what they're going to end up as. When we get to unaudited actuals in September, we'll have the actual beginning balance, which will, shift slightly, but not too much. And then I really wanted to show what the reserves were before we added in any of this assigned, because I thought that was kind of powerful to show before and after. So without anything assigned for 24-25, we're looking at about 10% reserve. Going into 25-26, about 6.52, and 26-27, projecting about a 6.5. Once we add in our assigned amounts, we drop down to 9%, 4.5%, and slightly under 4.5%. And then I also showed the difference, what it would be with the required, what our required 3% is for each year. And the 3% is based off our total expenditures, so it's unrestricted and restricted. And you just multiply that by 3%, and that will tell you what our 3% reserve should be. And this is the restricted side of the house. Again, it shows budget expenses, the increase, decrease in deficit spending, beginning balance and ending balance. And again, same thing with unrestricted. These are estimated actuals. When we get into September, we'll get into our unaudited actuals, which would become our actual new beginning balances, which would be relatively close. So for this slide right here, I thought this is a nice way to look at how our expenditures are kind of spread out through the district. You'll see salaries are a big portion of the pie, which that's how it should be. You'll see books and supplies, our contracted services, and you know that's usually about the right size for that one as well, because that's always higher than books and supplies. Capital outlays smaller, that's the one that's relatively about 40,000 a year. And then our SPED contribution also is in there. And then going forward, super important. And like I've said before, the principals have been doing a great job, and staff of getting our ADA up. We need to keep encouraging students and to be at school and to show up and so forth, because we've been doing a great job and it's actually showing in our data. So to continue doing that, continue promoting our schools, SAGE, DLI, and ELOP. We know that we've Santa Cruz Gardens enrollment is looking great. So that's super exciting. They're above last year's enrollment. So we're really excited about that. I think they're about roughly around 15 to 20 students higher than they were last year. So, and registration isn't completed yet. And then again, continue to reduce our deficit spending, and that's by meeting with our fiscal prioritization team and seeing what areas that we can reduce in our out years, so we can make all those decisions and so forth, carry on through the out years. And with that, is there any questions? All right, I feel like I talked really fast.
Your slides are really, really helpful. I think I might have said this last time too.
Okay.
This is our first time getting a full budget presentation from you, and you know, I can look at a SACS report, but it's not anything I do in my daily life. And so I really appreciate the way you've broken it down for us in your own charts and graphs, because
Thank you.
it's clicking and it's making sense in a whole other way.
Well, and that's what when I do create my slides, I like to kind of do it in a way as if I am someone from the outside looking in, like what
Yeah.
points do I need to see and what are the important points to view.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of try to do it.
I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Still looking.
Yeah.
No questions.
Yeah,
No questions.
there's nothing on you.
You good, Ariel?
I'm good. I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I thought I saw movement. but-
Yeah. Well, it's, I just want to say that, I think it's wonderful, some of the kind of careful things that you're thinking ahead about, like Amanda pointed out, the SPED thing,
Mhm.
thinking about the hiring of the different departments. Just, it's
Yeah.
great, the thinking ahead. I
Yeah.
appreciate that you're kind of allotting some of the money for some of these different categories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially getting into the next few years, we're gonna be
Yeah,
really
yes.
thoughtful and mindful
We
of
are.
what we're doing and
Yeah.
how we can make reductions and so
Yeah.
forth. So
And I didn't feel totally sad. You know, when I read the governor's numbers, it was just, oh man, but I like how you're thinking about it. It feels thoughtful, but also there's some optimism there that I'm excited about how we're using our money.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so nothing on email, right? So moving on. Thank you guys. Those are huge reports. We really appreciate
Yeah.
both of those huge reports. Well done.
Yes.
All right, discussion regarding board policy 6173, education for homeless children.
So we bring this one to you tonight. I bring it for Carissa, who did all the work, because we wanted to make sure that it was in place for next school year. So we were mindful not to try to add to this very robust agenda, but we mindfully brought this one for timelines. So the updates to this board policy have been recommended in order to stay compliant with several new laws. While the details of each new law are important, I think it's important for us to kind of capture and I would say even applaud the overall big picture here. And that is for districts to continue to find ways to support more students for whom stable housing is not a luxury afforded to them. So kind of a first blush on that is the term homeless. And you will see that throughout the policy that has been changed to, and homeless kind of projects a permanent state. And changing that language to students experiencing homelessness is a very conscious effort. It's more indicative of a temporary condition that we can support students and families to find their way out of. So you will see this change, throughout the plan. Secondly, again, with the kind of the big picture in mind first, changes have been made to intentionally increase the outreach to families experiencing homelessness, remove the stigma to that. So that families feel comfortable coming forward. And so families experiencing homelessness can have their children, our students, receive the appropriate supports. That's kind of the big push here, right? To do this, trainings for district staff have already begun. We had it in our district office team meeting, as well as ADCO. And also documents such as housing questionnaires have already been developed, so that staff can support families, especially at the time of registration. In summary, the changes are made in the spirit of full accessibility of the McKinney-Vento law. It's easy to lapse into compliance only mode on something like this, right? Like, hey, we put the checkbox for homeless on our registration forms,
Right.
and it wasn't marked, sort of thing, right? Our district does not take that approach. That's not our practice. We want to do everything we can to have our families deserving of the extra support provided by McKinney-Vento to have access to them. That's our practice. And the update in this board policy is intended to ensure the policy matches what I would say proudly, is the practice of our district. And it brings into alignment not only the practice and the policy, but make sure that those new laws are incorporated that are aimed at a better and more thorough support of students experiencing homelessness in our district. But of course, the laws are for the approach in the whole state. So of course, you may have questions about certain specifics, but I thought it was really important to capture the why on this one, and it's a very noble why. So if you have any questions about the changes.
Oh, I think it's important policy. On the third paragraph, where it says, when there are at least 15 students experiencing homeless, then we create a LCAP goal for them, because we have one in your report. So, 15 would probably be a lot for our district and would be normal for a larger unified district.
Yeah. So that's one of the challenges is that data, like I think if you ask anybody, we would say that number is deflated. There are more families, by the technical definition of experiencing homelessness than what is represented in our data. There's still a stigma attached to it.
Oh, yeah,
right? And so even for families who double up, Lord knows in this county with the price of housing, we have lots of families doing that. And and it's not always families that are completely down and out. It's families trying to just get a solid footing. And so we know that often those families are not marking, not
Right,
leaning into
okay.
those services. So I think it's chipping away, at
Mhm.
removing the stick. It's kind of like mental health. It feels like we've turned a corner a little bit on mental health. People are talking openly more about it. I think, experiencing homelessness, we're kind of in that beginning stage of chipping away at the stigma so that we can get a real read on the data. But still, whether it's 1 or 15 or 50, our district takes the approach of, we're here to support. And,
Yeah.
and we want to mine the data and continue to engage with families in a way that they'll feel comfortable, so that we get accurate data and an accurate read on who we need to serve.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, I know,
It's
yeah,
a societal.
Well, is
issue.
it kind of a transient population where families hear it and then they move on? Maybe more where
Some.
agriculture, they have the farm workers and they kind of come and go, but we don't have that really here.
I would say that's not, in this part of the county, that's,
Mhm.
that population is not a heavy part of it. It's not a big part of it. But I don't think you can characterize,
Okay.
it easily. I think, sometimes it's families in that situation, but sometimes it's just families that, like somebody lost a job and
Yeah.
we're gonna stay with grandma and grandpa for a few months, right?
Wow.
That
Yeah.
often goes underreported. And so we're trying to do a better job at making sure that we.
Well, I
we
have
get that
questions about what we're doing, so we'll stick to the policy.
Okay,
And I'll talk to you later or
Yeah.
do a presentation on
Absolutely.
what we're doing.
absolutely.
Yeah, in that vein, I was gonna say, I mean, I understand, there's probably specific legal language or legal reasons for needing to use the terms. I mean, I understand person first language and how it's important to say students experiencing homelessness as opposed to homeless students. But I wish it were expanded to kind of explain that it's like housing insecurity
Yes,
and
yeah.
and
Well,
so
we
I'm
can do
hoping
that,
that
whether it's a
exactly.
policy or not,
Right, in our staff communications, and in conversations you have with folks who are having some housing instability, I think again, that word homelessness can have
Mhm.
connotations that people don't necessarily identify with, but yeah, housing insecurity, sure, because we're staying in so-and-so's room for the next 3 months, but then we need to move on to the other place, and then we go to the other place, and so we don't have that stability that we need.
Yeah.
And that may be, get that shift in language. So I appreciate
Yeah.
like that our
Yeah.
staff gets it and is getting the training necessary for anyone who does need it,
Yeah.
because yeah, there are families out there we can.
And lots of flyers and posters like this one,
Mhm.
that are very family friendly, like you can enroll in school and here's the
Mhm.
things you can do. And
Mhm.
if you had to move, but your child loved the last school they were at, you can, under McKinney-Vento, you
Yeah.
can still go here,
Yeah.
right? So I
Mhm.
think
Right.
but beyond the policy,
Yeah.
that kind of breaking down the barriers can continue to happen and will continue to happen.
Great. Yeah. Anything else? All right. Thanks for that presentation.
Absolutely.
All right. Moving on to action items. Okay. Consider adoption of the resolution for the district general obligation bond on the November 5th, 24 general election ballot.
So a very big consideration for the board. I'd like to acknowledge that there's been a lot of work leading up to this point. It's not something we kind of bring to you. Oh, hey, by the way, we want to do a bond, right? And so thanks for being engaged in that process along the way. That's considered, that's included presentations, polling, the beginning stages of developing a facilities master plan. All of those things have led us to this point. So of course, a very clear and tangible beginning point for all of this consideration was the unfortunate condition that our fields are in. And we want our students to be able to have a safe place to play at all of our schools, first and foremost. Also, the modernization of our classrooms that existed prior to the last bond in 2016. We have these gleaming new wonderful classrooms on our campuses that were afforded us by the community supporting Measure C in 2016. We'd like to bring the previously existing classrooms up to that modern standard so that all of our students have the same facilities, same modern facilities. So with all of that in mind, all of the polling that took place and everything, led us to this moment. I will read aloud throughout the resolution. There's some exhibits. I think the main exhibit is Exhibit B, which kind of says this is what would go on the ballot measure. Just for the sake of not only being able to read it, but to hear it, I'll read that very short paragraph that tries to capture all of this work in a way that will resonate with our voters in our community. So to improve the quality of education, repair or replace leaky roofs, make health, safety, and security improvements, and modernize and renovate outdated classrooms, restrooms, important one, and school facilities shall, so Kell Union Elementary School District's measure be adopted, authorizing $73 million of bonds at legal rates, generating on average $4 million annually, as long as bonds are outstanding from levies of approximately 3 cents per $100 assessed value, with annual audits, independent citizens oversight, no money for administrative salaries, and all money staying local. If the board does approve this, that is what the voters would see. And it's that 3 cents per $100 of assessed value, or in a way that kind of makes more sense in the way we talk about housing, $30 per $100,000 of assessed value, right? That would generate $73 million. To put it in context, the 2016 bond generated $42 billion or $42 million. Billion would be a whole other one, bigger districts. And so between inflation, obviously, and the continued escalation of everything associated with construction costs, $73 million feels right in context, besides just the math of it. So I strongly recommend that the board consider approving this resolution so that our students and staff can have optimal learning conditions in and on our school facilities.
Great, thanks for that. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm big on safety. And, you know, fencing our schools, and you do have here health, safety, and is safety gonna fall into the line of securing our schools?
Short answer, yes. I know you and I have talked a lot about this.
Yeah.
Coming from a different part of the state where kind of enclosed school fencing is just a norm, right? And a little bit different in our community. So beyond the short answer of yes, it would include fencing. I would just say that I think our district has really taken a balanced approach with that. Going back years and years, we've polled the community about this and wanting safe campuses, and again, kind of going back to some of our other presentations tonight, the support has always been first for those internal ways to create safe campuses, like counseling, right? That if you help students with their mental health, then you know it's not as sometimes it can seem like an easy fix just to put up some fencing, right? And that solves things. We know that doesn't solve things if you're not getting to the heart of things. But that being said, I think they work together, right? That we've first allocated and prioritized funds for internal support like counseling. Along the way, we have continued to bolster the hard part of security, like security cameras and like increased fencing. So we've kind of done this in a deliberate manner, like New Brighton kind of have picked the little open spots throughout the years and continue to fence those.
Wacko could just come right off of Monterey Park.
Right.
And you know, I hate to have something happen and then say we should add fences.
So you've seen the plans, you know, for the New Brighton field, and that will include fencing. And so I think that's, you know, I humbly say, I think that's been the right way to go, is to not, you know, just try to take the easy thing and put the fencing on, but to have done it from the inside out. And that seems to have been supported by the community. But that's not to say we don't address the hard physical safety and security of our campuses. We have done that. We've just kind of done it in a deliberate manner. And if you think 5 years ago, security cameras were not a thing, right? And now next year we'll finish off our last campus of having security cameras, and that really helps. And each campus is getting more and more completely where they can be 100% fenced in. We're getting closer and closer to that. And this would afford us the opportunity to finish that job.
Okay, and then leaky roofs. don't we have deferred maintenance that would,
Not nearly
I
enough.
just thought of that now. I would have looked back on the budget, but I just thought of that now, but not
Not
enough.
nearly enough, and that's one of the questions I had asked Allison when we were putting this all together, and
Okay.
that money goes very fast.
Yeah, and then because we do have our COPS payment and so forth too, that we're paying out of 25 because the deferred maintenance budget
Mhm.
is really coming from 25. The contribution has to be made into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a great point bringing up the safety measures for our
Yeah.
campus, and I was just thinking about our classrooms and other workspaces that need modernization, and thinking about, you know, staff and student safety in those spaces as well. You know, we have some beautiful older vintage
Mhm.
Yeah.
classrooms, but I'm sure some of this money, if it's approved, you know, can really go towards that level of safety too. So there's so much to think about in terms of like, yes, so securing perimeters and absolutely everything we talk about with everyone's mental health and the counseling services, but also there are probably so many little things that can happen,
Yeah.
and it all just adds up, and we don't
Right.
get money given to us by the state or the federal government
Yeah.
to do this kind of work. And so I think it's always challenging that we have to come knocking on the door of our hardworking community members saying, hi, you know, we do
Mhm.
need this, but we need this because we're not getting it otherwise. And it's been 8 years since the last one, and I think we can really show our work on that one, that we've really been very, very responsible with those pond funds. And I think everyone can see these new buildings and how well, you know, utilized they are. So it can sound like a lot of money, but I agree that it's the appropriate amount of money, and it's
Mhm.
all, you know, for really worthwhile projects.
Mhm.
So I don't have any questions. I'm in favor of
No,
it.
and it feels really strong, just to piggyback on that we, you know, we have our facilities master plan
Yeah.
foundation, and that we're gathering the input to identify all those projects, because you're right. Beyond the classrooms, looking at the setup of offices,
Mhm.
you know, which are, you know, some of our schools are very outdated, and how we can have a more secure flow of
Right, yeah.
adults in and off campus.
Mhm.
Mhm.
How they come on campus, right?
Mhm.
Exactly. One
Mhm.
spot.
Mhm.
All of that is on the table to prioritize those funds if the community were to afford them to us.
And people think fencing is prison, but it's not. I mean, I wonder if the kids would feel more secure if there was fences around the schools. But also when one's entering the school, the students, I mean, it's a rolling gate. It's a huge entrance.
Mhm.
You're not going through this narrow thing.
I agree, and I
Yeah.
think if we had done it just in, you know, like made a big, you know, production out of like, oh, we're just gonna fence in the school, and we hadn't done all the other
Well, it
important
sounds,
work.
yeah,
right,
it sounds
then-
cheesy.
yeah,
but
right. Yeah.
But once it's done,
Yeah.
I would think students would feel secure.
And of course, the
Well-
fields, the fields, yeah.
Yeah.
Fields.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a big thing too, but,
Yeah.
okay.
And just, I mean, we're all in education, but it's disappointing that you know, we don't get the money that we need.
Right.
The fact that we
Yeah,
have
right.
leaky roofs, that the bathrooms need some help, that the buildings, I mean, it's disappointing, but I'm just so appreciative of our district that we're thinking outside the box of how do we still give our kids what we need, you know, and work with our community. And some of these things are just absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
I like that we're, you know, focused on the basics. I think that is a good use of money.
Mhm.
And I love seeing those PE fields and the facilities that the community can also use. That, you know, we talked earlier about the kids and tiredness and sadness, like getting out and
Yeah.
running around. I mean, that's part of school.
Mhm.
So I'm very happy for all the work that we did that went into this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I always feel that education starts coming on campus. I mean, in the classroom, you have, you know,
Yeah.
the math, you have A plus B, da, da, da. But however, you're walking on a nice, clean, modern campus. I think that sets the tone for what goes on in the classroom.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of things you said that, you know, just generated a couple of thoughts. You know, one, yes, just for the sheer, for our families and our students to have that kind of clean, modern, updated campus. But I think it goes without saying in this period of declining enrollment, attracting families is equally important, right? So it is a bit of a
True,
competition
true.
out there, and the facilities matter in that respect. And restrooms. You know, we're in this, great new era of burgeoning TK enrollment. We've added a grade level. And sometimes I think it kind of goes unrecognized that way because it's been this really, gradual
Right.
approach. We added a grade level to school after all this time of having K-12, right? It is now a TK through 12 system. We haven't kept up with the facilities. We don't have the restrooms. We make do with what we have. There's supposed to be some TK facilities funding, but that money was taken off the table. And so, districts like us have to fend for ourselves in that respect. So
Yeah.
just a couple of things to really think of.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Looks like Ariel, would you like to do anything?
Oh, yeah, I was wondering if you could elaborate on some of what I had emailed you about, just that there are going to be several bond related measures. Can you talk about what our consultants have said relative to like our position relative to there being others? Do schools typically tend to fare better than some of the other government one? Like how should we consider the competition, as it were? And if we put ourselves out there and we don't get it, what happens to us then?
Great questions. I will preface everything I say with the fact that I don't take anything for granted. So whether schools typically do well or not, we don't rest on those laurels. And then I'll say my piece to that. I'll invite any of the board members, especially Amanda, who's really been engaged with the election process. None of these are easy questions, right? And the last time we went out in 2016, if memory serves, Cabrillo College was going out for a big bond. And so that was a concern at that time. We still, the voters still supported us with over 70% of the vote at that time. So I don't think it's uncommon, especially in a presidential election year, for there to be several measures from different agencies. And so we know Central Fire is going out amongst other agencies. I think you have to be of two minds, right? You have to be mindful of that, what's happening in the community. At the same time, our job is to advocate for our schools and our students. And to have a realistic feel for whether the community would support it. We know that we are polling at over 70%, not to rest on our laurels, but we know that it is, we are showing community support. And so I think you have to take all of that into consideration and still make the decision to support our students is the way I look at it and, the way I approach it. They're good questions, though, and we have talked, with other agencies, and we know that it'll probably be a very busy ballot.
I agree. I think I'll just add in, all of the public agencies are probably getting the same good advice that we're getting, which is that it's a really good idea to be on the ballot during a presidential election, a general election, when there's anticipated to be a really high voter turnout. I also think it's good for us to keep in mind that not every voter for our school district is also a voter on every other competing ballot measure. So people who, a lot of people in our district live in unincorporated parts of the county. And so I myself, for example, don't get to vote on city election issues or certain other entities if I don't, Santa Cruz Gardens is on a different water district. We're on Santa Cruz City Water. We're not on SoCal Water. So we don't all get the same things on all of our ballots. So it might not feel as burdensome, but I really agree that our job is to advocate as much as we can for our student and staff needs. And so and our polling numbers are really good. I might be thinking differently if we were at 57%.
Sure,
yeah, there's going to be a lot of work to do, but it seems as though even given, the information that the people getting the poll were given, there was strong support. So I hope that helps a little.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, this is a resolution. So would you like to do a roll call? Motion. Sorry, jump.
Comment? Yeah.
Yeah.
happy to make the
Yeah.
motion to adopt the resolution for the GO bond measure on the November general election ballot.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right.
Did I-
And there's no public comment on email, just for the record again.
Okay, all right, so now it's the roll call.
Trustee Jackson Miller,
Aye.
trustee Donnelly,
Aye.
trustee Edmondson,
Aye.
trustee Gray.
I
All right.
Pass
Pass
it.
it. Wow.
Gotta get busy.
All right.
Thank you for the support.
Yeah.
Is this kind of that turning point where conversations like
Yeah.
change and it's not district business anymore, or,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Wonderful. All right, moving on to, 10B, consider approval of the updates on the California School Dashboard Local Indicator Self-Reflection Tool.
Well, thank you. So glad to be back. Thank you. This plan is much shorter than the one previously shown the board tonight. The background for this is that the California School Dashboard, we've talked about many times. It has some academic data, suspension data, attendance data, and so forth, and those are all aligned with the state goals, but or priorities rather. But one of the things that none of those metrics that are associated with those types of things can do is those can't measure some of the things that are happening internally in a district that are more qualitative in nature. And so what the state of California does is they create what is a State Board of Education adopted self-reflection tool for people who work within a school district to provide information about how they're doing in other areas associated with the state priorities. So this plan is just that. It's a self-reflection of how we're doing in certain areas. The first area of the report, if you go to, because there's a lot of directions at the beginning. So the actual self-reflection tool starts on page 4 of the plan itself, but it's page 642 of our Word docket. And it's specific to priority 1. And that's just, do we have the right teachers in the job? Do we have the materials that we need? And are the schools in good condition? And so we can say, this is how many teachers that we have that are qualified. And when I talk to Sandy, all of them are qualified for the position that they're in. Do our students have access to instructional materials? So we have enough instructional materials that are board adopted to serve every one of our students and then some, because we actually have a little fewer students than when we first did some of our adoptions. And then we have all of our facilities are in good repair or not needing some additional service. The second thing that the state wants to know is under priority 2, and that's the implementation of academic standards. How is our school district doing? And we rank ourselves from 1 to 5. And I'm fairly conservative in my ranking system. So in each of the areas, it says like, are you just exploring this, or are you doing this so well that it's sustainable? You don't want to be in area 1 or 2. So as the board takes a look at this plan, you can see that we're in columns 4 and 5, with the exception of history, social science, and that's because that's the adoption that we're wanting to do next. And it's kind of broken out into 2 things. One is providing the professional learning around these. The second one is, do we have the instructional materials for them? It's actually ranked the same. It's hard to do the training for them if you don't have the materials for them, but we do have training for the materials that we have. And then the third area is just ways that we can deliver instruction with the content standards and the curriculum frameworks. And so what that allows you to do is to say, like, if there's any new frameworks in that time, like the math framework is an example, like, are you working towards that? And so you can see how the self-reflection is rated us in mostly 3 or 4s and 5s and 1 in area 3. The next section just asked us to see like how are we implementing the following academic standards, and we're really in a place where we're in full implementation of them. The reason that I didn't go to full implementation and sustainability is precisely because we're redoing our scope and sequence right now. We have a summer team working on that. And so while we do follow the academic standards, I think sustainable is when you know what to teach when. And that's what the scope and sequence can help us to do. And then the next one is just about engaging the district engaging the following activities with teachers and administrators during and prior to the school year. Identifying professional learning needs. We do send out a survey to all staff multiple times a year and after PDs, just to make sure like we get the information that we need. Sometimes it's what we want, sometimes not, but it always guides our next time. And then the needs of individual teachers, we give open boxes for those kinds of things. And then for providing support to teachers for standards they've not yet mastered. And that's mostly through the evaluation or coaching processes or mentorship processes. So for in that area, again, I'm a bit conservative. The next part of the reflection talks about like how we relate to our families and staff. And so we're able to rate ourselves on the same scale for kind of that full implementation and 5 with sustainability. The area where I rated us 5 in sustainability is creating welcome environments, because we could see clearly in the family survey that a high 90% is how they rate. So that's, I think, easy to score us a 5. Where I scored us a little bit lower was supporting staff to learn about each family's strengths. And that's because that's also what was reported in the LCAP survey feedback, was just that connection piece. So something that I want to make sure we report on really accurately based on the data we have. So even though this is a self-reflection tool, a lot of it is based in the data that we collect. And then building partnerships for student outcomes, rated us 4 in the first 3 areas, but 3 a little bit lower in the progress in supporting families to understand and exercise their legal rights and advocate for their own students and all students. And that's because I don't think that always families know, and this the board policy that was here tonight is a good representation of that. Do they know how to get access to the things that they need in the legal services that are available to them? Okay, I'm going kind of fast. And then the next section is just seeking input for decision making. Again, during our time that we survey our families, they do tell us that they feel like they have a good level of input on that. And I do think that the full implementation of that is evident. The sustainability, I think, all comes into play when we talk about the district as a whole, and that's only because sometimes we don't have a school that's completely stable. So, and we have different processes for sometimes new administrators that join schools. So we don't always have like a family survey that goes out 3 times a year and has like ongoing feedback loops. But I think that's the area that, we definitely would like to go the direction for. And then, let's see. School climate is priority 6, and I just put some of our climate information in here. Some of it's very similar to the LCAP that you saw tonight. Just some of the things we asked about students, asked students about school. And then the state likes us to say, well, what does that tell you? And we just were able to elaborate a little bit more on our key learnings. And so what I said was that we wanted to focus on students that feel tired, sad, lonely, and worried. That's really what we want to do. Safety was not reported as a concern by our students, and then half the students reported that one of their favorite things about school is their teacher, and we know that that's a high leverage consideration for all schools, but specifically ours, because that's what the kids say. And then changes to the existing plan based on what we know, as that is to involve staff, including counselors, in data and planning for deeper implementation of SEL, because we know that will affect change and then how our students are feeling. And then just to use the cost processes, which are coordinated student services team processes, to really intervene with students who lack that sense of belonging in school. And then the broad course of study doesn't always show itself to be an issue for us necessarily, so we don't report on it in totality. A broad course of study typically is meant for more at the high school level, but we do in our district offer integrated arts and lots of programs that afford our students the opportunity to take a broad course of study. So we do provide like a very short explanation of that. And then we avail those to unduplicated students and then to the students at large in our ELAP program as well. And then the other priorities are associated with County Office of Education reports, not for us. We don't have to report on any of those big boxes. They have to do that. And that is the self-reflection tool for you tonight. And my recommendation is to request that you approve it.
All right, thanks for that. Questions or comments?
Just want to make sure I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
This particular tool is new,
Yeah.
right?
It is a new, it's a tool that is new to report to a board.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's like you're showing your work on the local indicators.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we haven't seen this particular thing.
Yeah.
Because of course, my question was going to be, are they making you do more reports, Jessica? You were doing it before, it just didn't need to be on a board docket.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting and helpful to see, and it gives context to the local indicators that we see when we look at the dashboard, but
Yeah.
just checking in on that. Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate your worry, but no, we did it before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, okay, thank you.
I do like that I'm noticing, on the Healthy Kids survey, what do you like most about school? 77% said the physical education, and then that's just connecting to the general bond, to the master's facility plan. I just really appreciate how we're really thinking about the student experience of school. How do we get the kids to really feel like they belong at school? I like that.
Yeah. We love them.
Anything else?
There's nothing on email.
All right, so this is
Yeah.
just a motion. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve updates on the California School Dashboard, local indicator self-reflection tool.
All right, do I have a second? All
I'll second.
right, all in favor?
Aye.
I
Any opposed? All right. Thank you. Moving on. Consider approval of the SoCal Education Association Joint Initiative Collective Bargaining Agreement Proposal for negotiations for the 24-25 school year.
I know, I say sunshine proposal.
All right.
Earlier, we had a public hearing and I went over the different articles that both sides have agreed to negotiate on in 24-25. And so now I ask the board to consider approving that proposal.
All right, questions or comments?
Let's
No?
do
I
it.
just think of the Brady Bunch song, you know, sunshine. I went through my head.
That's on documents.
Bring out Bobby and.
Family band.
Spiffman, Spiff and Brady Bunch. And there's
My
nothing on.
Don't try to figure my mind.
Ariel, anything? Nope, doing good. Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate all our staff.
Mhm.
May I have a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the sunshine with SEA.
All right, do you have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the agreement is sunshined.
Right.
All right, moving on to CSEA's sunshine agreement for the
Yes.
24-25 school year.
And again, earlier we had a public hearing and all the articles that both parties have agreed to negotiate on this year were shared. And so I asked the board to consider approving CSEA's sunshine proposal.
All right, any comments or questions?
Sunny day.
All right, can we move to a motion? Would someone like to make a motion?
Well, I'll be happy to make the motion to approve this CSEA's joint collective bargaining agreement.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
I,
Any opposed? All right, the sunshine agreement for CSEA passes. Yay.
That's so great. That's great.
Yes.
Open it up.
All right. Moving on to 10E, consider approval of the memorandum of understanding with the City of Capitola After School Rec Program and Equity Swim.
But again, in the spirit of not just bringing things to the board and dropping on them, I'll remind you that at the last board meeting, Nikki Bryant from the Recreation Department of Capitola came and presented to us to give us kind of a nice rounded view of the kind of programs, not only that they're providing, but that they're partnering with us. And they're actually City of Capitola, when I think of that term educational partners that we throw out a lot, they're the first folks I think of because we really do collaborate with them a lot in what I think is a meaningful way. So
Gone a long way. So
couple specific programs that are part of that is the After School Rec Club and Equity Swim. You heard about those at the last meeting. And I always like to go back to the After School Rec Club and just acknowledge that came out of a real good collaboration from the darkest times of COVID, right?
Yeah.
Is when
right,
even
right.
during distance learning, we needed some central places for students to be able to learn and have a safe place to go. And we had meetings and said, like, this is all new to us. We're trying to figure this out together. And City of Capitola really stepped up. And even before that, backtracking a little bit more, even when we had CKC as a childcare partner, and we still do, we didn't have anything at the middle school. And, we start middle school in 6th grade. Those kids are still pretty young and, often need a place to go after school. And this was before anybody ever heard of anything called ELOP, right? And so they really stepped up and filled voids in those two areas and under different names, but what has become the After School Rec Club. And we have traditionally the last few years made a contribution to that, specifically aimed at subsidizing the tuition for the After School Rec Club for low income families. So of course, I think is a noble cause. We know, think of housing costs in the county, and then one of the next thing that comes is a struggle for families is childcare costs, finding childcare and then the cost of it, right? So to be able to address that with our partners, besides being noble pursuit, it's a good deal for us, right? For us to make a contribution, but not have to staff it, execute it, implement it. Is a really good deal. Similarly, with the Equity Sim program, that came as just a need identified by the county, is that this is a beach centric area. I think we can all agree on that. And if swimming and feeling confident in the water is something that's just part and parcel of being in this community. I always think of, like, if this were an Old West town and you didn't know how to ride a horse, it's kind of like living here and not be feeling confident in the water, right? And so with that very specific thought in mind, is that there's some families that can't afford to have swim lessons and build up that confidence that kind of leads to that comfortability and leads to things like junior guards. One of our scholarship winners tonight, that was a perfect symbol of that. And so the city started this 2 years ago. They have fully funded it themselves, and it directly serves our students. And so, everybody's budget is getting tighter, right? And so they've had to think about whether they can continue to fund it fully. And so an idea that we had is to split the cost of that. Again, pretty good deal for us. Yes, it's money, and yes, it's money that would come out of our ELOP funds. But it's kind of perfectly aligned with what ELOP is supposed to do, is provide other opportunities for students outside the regular school day. And they're doing all the work, just put it bluntly. They're staffing it and they're executing it. And so we thought, since it's the addition of Equity Swim contributing to that, we'll bring down just a little bit the amount we're contributing to the After School Rec Club, but then contribute to the Equity Swim for a total. Last year, we contributed $30,000 just to After School Rec. This year, my recommendation is for a total of $36,000, 20 to the After School Rec Club, 16, which represents about half the cost of the Equity Swim Club. So I recommend that we consider contributing that much to those two programs.
All right, thanks for that. Questions and comments?
This is great. I like Nikki's energy too. doing all this. Just kind of curious, have you heard from any past board members about our collaboration with Capitola at all?
There may be one that this boardroom is named after.
Really? Okay.
In a positive way, I would say.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
good
yeah.
things, but you know,
Yeah.
with, I don't know, that it was just a thought I had is that called, and said, what are you doing?
Oh, no, not way at all.
Okay, okay,
No,
okay.
No.
All right, good.
I appreciate that we just had this presentation from Nikki, so I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about, and it was so exciting seeing the photos and hearing firsthand just the
Yeah.
good work that they're
Right.
doing, and so thoughtful that they created the equity swim program. It feels really necessary.
Yeah.
And I think this is what ELOP money is for.
Right.
Yeah.
These are our kids, these that need a little extra help, so it's wonderful.
No, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
There's nothing on email.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
I would love to make the motion to approve the MOU with the city of Capitola after school rec club and equity swim program.
All right, do I have a second?
Happy to second. Oh, you want that? You want the second?
They're all set. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, very exciting. Motion passes. Moving on to correspondence. Feel free to send me an email. Future agenda items.
I think with November being it's a homeless youth awareness month, maybe do a presentation on how we are helping our homeless students. I mean, we could, talk about that later, but I think that would be good. Especially if we set a resolution acknowledging it.
All right,
Good idea.
all right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I'll make the motion to adjourn.
All right, do I have a second?
Oh,
I will second.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there
Oh,
we go. 30 seconds,
To it,
yeah.
to it. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
I
Any opposed? All right, meeting is adjourned.
All right, thank you.
see the longer
Yay.
the agenda is, the sooner
be-
we're out of here. It's those little ones where we're just.
The fewer number of people at the table.